Okay, you think you're ready? You are now live on Facebook, YouTube, and what was that other thing called? What's going on? We're on new. We need to get some viewers already. Where's our viewers? Come on, let's have some viewers live on our live video. We have our technical guy trying to figure out a couple things. Hopefully it'll get started in a second. I do want to remind all you viewers, the guys that are watching from the other end, that you should be sharing this video, you should be liking this video, and you should be commenting on this video and asking questions if you feel they're appropriate, and we will try to give you answers. Of course, we will not hold you accountable to that, but we would definitely appreciate if you would help us spread the light, right? Spread the light. The wisdom, maybe. Why the light? Anyways, to help make sure that more people see this video, you should be sharing this, liking this. And of course, if in middle of the live class you actually dare to leave a comment during the live class, we might actually mention you and answer your question perhaps. So if you want to feel appreciated, loved, cared about, recognized all the way from the holy city of Tzfat, I would highly suggest you put a comment on there. And if you're on YouTube, you should definitely subscribe and hit the bell button, because this way you will be reminded every time I come live, which we've been doing every day for the last few days. We'll see how well, depending on your participation, that's how we're going to decide whether we're going to continue it. So the more you participate, the bigger chance there is for us to continue this program. All right? Now, yeah?
If you like this content from YTD, go to YTD.com and feel free to get set up.
YTD.com? There is actually, no, it's actually The Way Inside. Our yeshiva is The Way Inside, thewayinside.org, O-R-G, and, and you could donate there, The Way Inside, donate. Say you donated because you saw me in this class, and then maybe I'll get, maybe they'll give me a little kickback. Maybe, I don't know. We'll see. I have to organize with the rabbi that says, give him a kickback because he did his class online, and that's how we got the donation. Anyways, before we begin, I wanted to do a bit of an interesting meditation or contemplation on something that I was thinking about today, and I think it's very relevant to general Talmud study. Okay? Very often people, when it comes to religion and spirituality, they are aloof. It's like there's the world of God, and then there's this world, right? There's only one problem with that, is that who created this world is God. And so what many people use spirituality and religion for is what I call an escape. Escape is a way of getting out of our reality, and they think that somehow the God that created this reality wants you to leave this reality, even though he's the one that put you here. Does that make any sense? I don't think so. I think that if God created this reality, and he put you in this reality, there's only one logical conclusion that you could and should be making, is that the most important reality for you at this time and place is right here. And as a matter of fact, it even says that in Deuteronomy. Okay, in Deuteronomy it mentions this. It says, Lo b'shamayim hi. It's not in heaven. The Torah is not in heaven. It says it's close to you. Ki kori veilecho hadavar ma'od beficha uvelvavcha la'asoisei. So those of you that think that you're doing God a favor by escaping this reality and living in a reality that's not here and now, you are actually destroying and, how should I say it, insulting God in his very creation. Okay? So it's not about escaping this reality and living some fluffy life in the top of a mountain, excluded, where you meet no one, etc. And then you're like, but I'm pure, now I'm pure, and I'm different, and I feel cool. No, that's a fantasy, that's an escape. That's exactly what happens when a person takes drugs. Okay, you ever took drugs, Dan Sadiq?
Sure.
Huh?
It's about me today.
He says not about him today. I don't know who took drugs. Drugs? What? Drugs? What are you talking about?
I used to do drugs.
You used to. Oh,
I
here
still
we
do,
have.
but I used to too.
Huh? Oh, you still do drugs? Oy vey. Could you? Which drugs? Coffee. Coffee. As a matter of fact, one time I went to the doctor, and he asked me if I'm on drugs. I said, yes, I'm heavily addicted to coffee. And he was like, well, you're right, that is a drug, but we don't count it. Anyways.
It's denial.
Huh?
Denial.
It's denial. The doctors are in denial. They're in denial that coffee's a drug. I actually got off of coffee because it almost killed me. Don't ask me about that story. You want to know more of that story? No, you're not interested. Huh?
I am interested.
You are interested? Huh? Offline?
I don't know.
I shouldn't
How you
share
feel
all
about
my
sharing?
private. I shouldn't share all my private situations with the people online. What's wrong with them? Why should I share it with you and not them? Why are you any better than the guy that I have no idea who his name is? Thaddeus Melchior, Malchior, right? I'm not sure, but yeah. Hi back.
You know who else is in denial?
Who else is in denial?
People in the triangle.
The people in denial that are swimming in denial, they're in denial. Right, okay, very nice. Very funny. Anyways, back to what I was saying. The reason why Talmud specifically is so important is because it shows you how practical and how relevant every detail of our own reality is to godly service. As a matter of fact, many religions, they go out there and the first thing they want you to do is believe in something, and once you believe in it, they say you're good, you're going to heaven, you're doing well. Now, I got a secret for you guys watching online and maybe even for you guys over here. Okay? Your entrance into hell or heaven, either one, is not going to be decided based on what you believe. It won't be. I'm sorry, anybody that told you that is wrong. Okay? It's going to be based on what you did and what you accomplished. Okay, that's a very important element that a lot of people don't understand, but that's exactly what you're going to be judged on. No one's going to be judging, why do you believe this? Why do you believe this? Because that's the life you had. Those are the experiences you had. They're going to judge you on what did you accomplish? What were your actions? Now, even belief could be an action, because if you believe something, then you should at least research it and ensure that it is actually accurate. Okay, why is the guy, if belief is so important, if belief is so accurate, right, and it's so virtuous, right, then maybe a suicide bomber is a very holy person, right, because he's following his belief.
He thinks he is.
Yeah, he thinks he is, but does that mean he is? Okay, so if you're going to tell me that belief is actually virtuous, well then why is his belief any better than yours? Because he believes in something that you don't believe in? So what? So what? What you get to determine what God wants, not him. Maybe he gets to determine what God wants, and not you, right? And therefore, it is important to realize that you do need to research. If you have a belief, you have to research it, and you have to test it, and you have to ensure that it's true. Okay, so it's not, and that's what you're going to be judged on. You're going to be judged on your effort and your actual implementation of what you understand is the best thing. And I believe this, and people have argued with me with this in the past, but I believe 100%, not 2%, not 3%, 100%, that if you honestly and sincerely follow what you understand is the best thing at that point, at that given time, you will be virtuous. And you know what? The God of the universe, if in fact you're doing something wrong, he will show you messages. So you have to be open to listening and participating in God's communication to you. But at the end of the day, you follow what you understand is the best thing at that given time. And God will hopefully show you throughout the time what is in fact the right thing. And believe it or not, God does speak to you. Okay, a lot of people say that if you speak to God, it's a healthy thing. But if he speaks back, you got a problem. You ever heard that one? You never heard that one? What's wrong with you? How does a Jew not hear such a famous joke? Are you Jewish? Huh? Uh-oh. No, just kidding. Yeah, anyways. But the fact is that God does communicate with you. But God has a much more complex way of communicating with you. God communicates with you with every single thing that goes on in front of your face is God's communicating. God is constantly communicating with you. The very fact that you're sitting here listening to me means that God is communicating to you through me. What is he telling you? I can't tell you what he's telling you. But I can tell you that right now God's communicating to you through me. And that's also for you guys online that are listening to this. God is communicating to you through me. That doesn't necessarily mean I can tell you what that message actually is. You have to listen to my words, and then through those words, you are getting a message from God, and I'm not sure what that message is. Okay? Now, based on this, that is why it's so important to study the Talmud, to study the Gemara, because you're going to see how intricate it is and how detailed it is on understanding things from the depth. And to understand this world and to understand godliness and to just understand virtue to the max, right? That is what's going on here in the Gemara. I do want to tell you guys that are viewing that you do have the ability to put messages to me during the class by writing a comment. If you write a comment during the live class, I might actually be able to read it and possibly respond to it if in fact it is something that I feel is something I should respond to. You see, what did he say? Said something interesting or no?
Said you don't have to be Jewish to have to speak English to have heard the joke or any variation of other languages.
That is actually true. That is actually true. You don't have to be Jewish to hear the joke, but if you're Jewish and you didn't hear the joke, then there's a problem, right? If you're not Jewish and you didn't hear the joke, okay, the Jewish people are constantly joking all the time. We're one big joke. That's what the Jewish people are, one big joke, right? It's very funny, but it's, you know what they say, that within humor, what do they say? There's a lot of intensity within humor. There's a statement like that. There's a lot of deep truth in humor, right? And that's why Jewish people are one big joke. Right? We like joking with each other. We like joking with others. And thank you all for joining our joke session, which will include some very deep logical and spiritual concepts, etc. All right? Good. Now, I do want to reiterate a little bit from yesterday's Gemara because some people are having difficulty understanding it, etc. Okay? We started out with 3 opinions regarding mixing hot water and cold water on the Shabbos, on Sabbath. Okay? Now, on the Sabbath, we're not allowed to cook. The Jewish nation is prohibited from cooking on Shabbos. Now, if you heat up water, that is actually considered cooking. And you're not allowed to do that on the Sabbath. I'm sorry, you can't do that. Okay? Now, the question is, when you mix hot and cold water, the cold water is being heated up, and is that in fact cooking, or isn't it in fact cooking? What do you think, Yitzchak? Depends. Good. What does it depend on?
If it's hot into cold or cold into hot, it also depends on.
Now you're getting a little bit confusing. But what does it really depend on? What does it depend on if you're cooking, you're not cooking?
Raising the temperature past a certain point.
Oh, so are you raising the temperature past a certain point? If up until a certain point, it's not considered cooking. Only past that point, it is considered cooking. Okay? So if you raise, we said it's approximately 115 degrees according to the most strict opinion. Fahrenheit, that's right. Fahrenheit, not Celsius. 115 degrees Celsius, water doesn't exist at that temperature as far as I know. Right? Unless you pressure it. You ever used a pressure cooker? Yeah, you could get water to heat past 100 degrees Celsius with a pressure cooker. But that's a bit dangerous. Anyways, so it depends whether you're raising the temperature of that water beyond Yad Saledis boy or not. That's what it depends on. Right? Good. Now, if you have boiling hot water and you're going to pour hot water into cold water, according to some opinions, there's no way that the cold water could get heated up quick enough to reach a point where it is a problem. Only if it's below. Then only if it's the other way around. If you're putting cold water into hot water, then the cold water will heat up. Okay? So we really have 3 opinions here. We have one opinion called Beis Shammai, and Beis Shammai holds. Okay, for anybody out there that wants to learn an interesting ancient name, you want to meet a Talmudist, you tell them about Beis Shammai. Shammai, remember the word Shammai. Okay, if you remember the word Shammai, you go to somebody. Yeah, I remember Beis Shammai said. And everybody will be like, oh, wow, this guy knows his stuff, right? And another one is, what's the other one besides Beis Shammai? Beit Hillel, right? You say Hillel says, tell somebody that Hillel says, and they'll be like, oh, wow, this guy knows his stuff, right? Huh? Anyways, so Beis Shammai says if you're putting hot into cold water, it is not a problem. But if you're putting cold water into hot water, it is a problem. Okay? Now, why would there be a difference if you're putting hot into cold or cold into hot? Anybody? By the way, the people that are watching this live could also put in the comments if you think you have an answer to one of my questions. Yeah? What's the difference between putting hot into cold or cold into hot? How does that make a difference in reality? No? Any scientists out there? Anybody think that they're a scientist? Huh? You don't think you're a scientist? Oh, he's a real scientist, this guy, you know. Yeah. Anyways, that's why he's not answering, because it's like, you know, this is easy science. I can't answer this question. What's the difference between putting hot water into cold water or cold water into hot water?
Bottom rules.
So we said that there's a concept, halachically, the bottom rules. The bottom one has more strength. Now, specifically, when you're putting hot into cold water stays at the top. Since it stays at the top, it will kind of bounce into the cold water and then float to the top, and the two will remain separated, right? But what happens if you pour cold water into hot water? The cold will sink to the bottom, and since it's sinking to the bottom, it has all that space that as it's sinking, it's completely mixing and getting hotter, so the hot has a bigger chance of heating up the cold water if the hot water is on the bottom, right? Anyways, that theory is actually a theory that I personally came up with. It's not written in the Gemara, all right? Yeah? Good. Now, Beis Shammai says you can always put hot into cold, but not cold into hot. Beis Hillel says in a cup you can do whatever you want, but in a ambati, right, which is a built-in bathtub, there you can't. There you can't do it. Right? You could only do hot into cold and not cold into hot. Right? Good. This is live for whoever just asked that question. And Mr. What is this? How do you say renegade? Renegade. Mr. Renegade. This is live, and you could ask questions if you want, and we'll be happy to answer them if it's appropriate to the class. Okay? Good. So we have Thaddeus basically answer the question that I was, as I explained it, it seems he's explaining it the same way, which is good. You got it properly. Thank you. Good. Let's continue on. Now, we have Rabbi Shimon that prohibits, but that's all that it says. The quote says, Rabbi Shimon prohibits. Now, the question is, what does he prohibit? It is not clear in the Gemara, or in the original quote, what he prohibited. So we assumed that he prohibited the last thing that was permitted. Because that's usually when somebody prohibits something, it's prohibiting the last thing that was permitted. Right, Yitzchak? What was the last thing that was permitted in the quote?
Hot and cold into hot and hot into cold?
No, hot into cold of an ambati.
Yeah.
Right? So it sounds like he's prohibiting the hot into cold of the ambati. That's what it sounds like. Okay? Yeah? Now, so once the Gemara concludes that that is what we think is going on, right? That's what we think is the rule. Now the Gemara will try to challenge that, as it usually will do. Okay? Now, how is it challenging it? It's challenging it by the very fact that Rav Yosef attempted to suggest that a seifel is like an ambati. Now, if a seifel is like an ambati, which is a pail, if a pail is the same as a bathtub, means there's no real legitimate way to mix hot and cold on Shabbat, right? That's a problem, because we know that we are allowed to mix hot and cold on Shabbat. It's very clear that that is actually allowed, right? Now, if that's actually allowed, and there's no way to do it, that wouldn't make any sense, right? So how do we make sense of this whole thing? No, how do we make sense of this? So the Gemara basically says Rabbi Shimon is not speaking about the latter part of the quote is speaking about the earlier part of the quote. What was the early part of the quote? Where Beis Hillel allows you to mix it in a cup, however you want. But now we have a problem on that, because if he's only arguing on the cup, then he's essentially saying the same thing as Beis Shammai. Now, would Rabbi Shimon say the same thing as Beis Shammai? Why not? Why can't Rabbi Shimon say the same thing as Beis Shammai?
They didn't like each other.
Huh?
They didn't like each other.
They didn't like each other. Who says they even met each other?
People magazine.
Huh? People magazine? They had it back then 2,000 years ago. They did. They called it Mishpacha. People magazine. Huh? Gashmias. Okay? Anybody out there, except that's not in this class, if anybody gets what's Gashmias, I will mention your name just because of that. You get a call out if you could tell me what Gashmias means. Okay, this is this is like internal lingo, but let's see, maybe somebody over there knows what's Gashmias. Okay, what's Gashmias? Anybody out there knows what Gashmias is? Mr. Renegade, you know what Gashmias is? Huh? What's You don't even know what Gashmias is. Listen. You have to learn the internal lingo over here. The secret society, right?
That's why we're in a cave.
You know these Jews. You know these Jews control the world. I'm just trying to figure out which ones. Like which one are they? Find it for me, please. Which Jew controls the world? George Soros. They say he's Jewish. I don't know. Do you believe he's Jewish? I think he's so anti-Semitic that he basically claims he's Jewish because he knows that he's doing such horrible things to the world, and he wanted the people to blame the Jews and not whoever he really was. I don't know. That's just a conspiracy theory. Huh? He's Kofer Magneto.
Yeah.
Anybody over there know what Kofer Magneto is? I don't even know. What's Magneto? I don't even know what that word means. What's Magneto?
It's from the X-Men. It was Magneto's he's the supervillain, but when he was a kid, he was in Auschwitz, and then he saw his parents get carried away to the concentration camps, and he saw the horrible things the Nazis did. Yeah. And then unlocked his mutant powers, and then later used his mutant powers to try to subjugate the world and destroy it. Oh. That's literally what happened to George Soros.
That's what happened to George Soros?
Literally.
Tell him what his power
All right. What was his power?
Magneto's power is he can make magnetic fields and control metal and stuff.
Oh, is he real?
No. No, he's George
What's
Soros.
Hashem's power?
Huh?
What's Hashem's power?
What's Hashem's power? I don't know. Anyways, let's get it. What's that?
Infinite.
Infinite what?
Power.
Infinite power.
It doesn't
Huh?
Infinite.
Infinite power. Okay. Anyways.
And finite.
Yeah. So back to what we're saying from the Gemara. Okay. The Gemara is basically saying what? The Gemara basically says Rabbi Shimon is not going to say the same thing as Beis Shammai, not because he can't say the same thing as Beis Shammai, is because they lived in different generations. And usually early generations did not argue with people from later generations. Okay? Or the opposite. Well, yeah. The people from later generations didn't argue with the people from earlier generations. And they didn't either side with them. By the way, you should know, I want to teach you guys, those guys that are online as well as my students over here, I want to teach you a rule of respect, okay? A rule of respect. It actually says, on one hand, you're not allowed to disagree with your father because that's disrespecting your father. But you know what else it says? You can't agree with your father either because that's disrespect. Why is it disrespect to agree with your father? Why would it be disrespect to agree with your father?
It's as if you think that your opinion matters.
Huh?
It's as if you think that your opinion matters.
Very good. It's as if you think your opinion matters, but it's more than as if you think your opinion matters. It's trying to say that your dad's opinion is not strong enough without you. Therefore, he needs you to back him up. Right? You know, you have these street preachers, they usually have like 3 guys behind them, and they preach, and then the 3 guys are like, yeah! What? You have the entourage. Yeah, true that. Right? You go to New York. True that. Yes. And every single word he's like, yeah, that's true. That's true. Right? Why does he need the guy to say that? Because no one's going to believe him unless he has 3 guys behind him saying, that's true, which means he has no power in himself. He has no authority in what he's saying. And he needs 3 guys to stand behind him and say, yeah, that's true, man, that's true. Go for it. Yeah. Right? Now, why? So basically, he needs people to back up his opinion. Now, if you actually say in public, in front of other people, you say, Dad, I think you're right, that's actually disrespectful because you're basically saying, listen, Dad, we wouldn't have believed you unless I said I think you're right. right? Meaning I'm backing you up. I'm endorsing you, right? Your dad needs endorsement. Sheesh. What kind of disrespect is that? You think your dad needs your endorsement? What's wrong with you, man? Sheesh. That's disrespectful. And it's the same thing. If a rabbi of an earlier generation said something, by the way, sometimes they would argue with him, but they would definitely not agree with him. Because agreeing with him would be like, hold on, this is great rabbi needs me to agree with him. What's wrong? Why would he need me to agree with him? Doesn't make any sense.
So why does he reference it?
Oh, so now that we have Rabbi Shimon, he cannot be saying, again, the Gemara is already concluded that Rabbi Shimon cannot be saying the same thing as Beis Shammai. Now, if we just calculated that in fact Rabbi Shimon is saying the same thing as Beis Shammai, means that something is wrong in our understanding of what's going on. Okay? Number one, we need to understand we're wrong. I've said this a lot and I'll say it again. One of the biggest flaws in science today is the lack of ability for many scientists to say we don't know. Okay? If there's a phenomenon, if there's something that happens, what they do is the scientists get together and they come up with a hypothesis. Okay? They come up with an hypothesis and they say, okay, well, now that I came up with this hypothesis, let's assume this is true until proven otherwise, right? And very often I've spoken to scientists about various different things and I've showed them flaws in the very hypothesis. And they say, well, so give a better hypothesis. In other words, it's a result of human arrogance, and I would say specifically scientific arrogance. What they basically say is that we know the best, right? And therefore, if there's a phenomenon, if there's a situation, right, the best hypothesis is the closest to the truth. But that's not necessarily true. It could be we just don't know. Now, what happened, the reason why this is very destructive to science today, and it's horrible what it does to science today, the reason why it's so destructive is because what happens is another scientist, say 50 years later, he actually discovers the truth. Now he has to take down the scientist that makes no sense, right? And everybody's like, well, how do you take him down? He is Mr. blah, 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 blah. Okay? And Mr. blah, 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 he has authority and he is trusted and he was a person that everybody listened to. So how could you come and reject him? The answer is the guy to begin with didn't have any point, right? And that's why it's very important that in the Gemara, in Talmudic logic, very often the first thing we need to understand is we don't understand anything. Once we understand that we don't understand something, that something's wrong, now we can try to figure out what's right. Right? And until we come up with a resolution that is actually sound, we will not give up. We will not admit, we will not try to claim that we know something that we don't. Not happening. We are simply going to, what are we going to do? We're going to continue trying to figure it out. But we're never going to say we think we figured it out when the logic is flawed. Okay? We're not going to just throw out hypothesis, like they say, you know how people choose, they want their socks in the morning, they need to decide whether, they wear the same socks every day until when? So every day they take their socks and they throw them on the bathroom wall. If it falls down, they wear it again. If it sticks, and if it sticks to the wall. Dan Sadiq. Dan Sadiq is like, oy vey, those are the black marks in my bed. I was wondering what those black marks were. Anyways, yes, don't try it at home. It's good to wear new socks every day. And What's that?
You could do that with pasta.
With pasta? You see if it's ready.
Just one piece.
But don't do it on the same wall as your socks. Don't do it. Don't do the pasta on the same wall as your socks. That wouldn't be good. Anyways, I want to remind you guys watching that you could put a comment, and if you do, I might actually mention you during the live class. We are still live, and you have that option right now to put a comment. And if you do, if it's a question or a comment, we may mention it if we feel it's relevant to the class. All right? Let's continue. Where are we going? Okay. So, now we decided that Rabbi Shimon disagrees. Sorry, Rabbi Shimon is not saying the same thing as Abaye, and is not saying the same as Hillel. So, the only option we have left in this situation is, what's the only option we have left in this situation? to say that Rabbi Shimon means something completely different. What is that we think he's saying completely different? Huh? So we say that he is pretty much saying that there was never a discussion between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. There was never such a discussion. Yeah, he's disagreeing with the fact that this discussion took place. You'll say, "Oh, I thought it did." What do you mean? I read it says right here that it took place. Yeah, well, somebody said it took place, but he says it didn't take place. And what he says is that there's one simple rule: you can always put hot into cold, and you can never put cold into hot. That's what he says. All right, and that is the end of the discussion on that particular part of the Talmud. Now, David Berenstein is getting antsy. He's like, I want to move on already. Let's go on to the next piece of Gemara. I understand this, and I just want to move on, right? Huh? Yes? Good. All right. So now we're going to tell you a story after everything we concluded. Now, what did we conclude? We concluded that you're allowed to put hot water into cold water, but not cold water into hot water. Yeah? Huh? Okay. Let's read this story. Amar Rav Huna, bereid Rav Yeshua. Rav Huna, the son of Rabbi Yeshua, said as follows. Was that really your dad? No? Somebody commented he's your dad. I'm like, what? I'm like, what's going on here?
You're going to be prepared to ignore a lot of nonsense.
There's a lot of nonsense that people...
Not yet.
Oh, not yet. Eventually. When we start getting 100, 200 followers, we're going to start getting a lot of nonsense, and we're going to have our friend David Collin over here. He's going to make sure that keep the crazy comments in check. But all the good comments we definitely appreciate and like. Anyways.
And if you bless us, you'll be blessed, and if you curse us, you'll be cursed.
If you bless us, you'll be blessed, and if you curse us, you'll be cursed. Okay, there you go. You can bless us in the comments as well if you want, right? And there you go. And then you'll actually bless us. When you comment, it actually goes to more people, and then it's also a blessing, right? It's helping us bless. If you share this video, it's also blessing, etc. Anyways, let's continue. Amar Rav Huna bereid Rav Yeshua. Says Rav Huna, the son of Rabbi Yeshua, Chazina leil Rava. I saw Rava. Okay? The loy koped amana. That he was not particular about this whole water situation. Okay? He didn't care about it. Which means that he put hot into cold, cold into hot. Seemingly it didn't make a difference to him. Why didn't he care? So it says as follows. Miditani Rabbi Chia, from this that Rabbi Chia taught, Noisin Adam Kisen Shalmayim Utich Seifel Shalmayim. Rabbi Chia taught a brisa that says a person can place a jug of water into a bucket, whether it's cold into hot or whether it is hot into cold. Either way, you can do it either way you want. Yeah. Amalei Rav Huna Rav Ashi. Now Rav Huna responds to Rav Ashi. He asks Rav Ashi as follows: Dil Mashani Hasam. Perhaps that situation is different. Okay, even though it says over there that he didn't mind putting it into cold into hot or hot into cold, maybe that's different. The mifsak kli, that it was separated by a vessel. So perhaps when Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel were talking about pouring cold water into hot water, they were talking about actually pouring the hot water into the cold water or the cold water into the hot water, either one, right? However, in the case that we quoted, it says that he put a flask or something like a bottle into a bucket. Now, if you put a bottle into a bucket, you're not putting the water into one another. You're only putting it's separated by the vessel. The vessel itself separates them. And perhaps the separation of the vessel makes all the difference. You understand? Maybe meaning to pour the water in directly. If you pour the water in directly, it's one of the waters are definitely either heating or cooling the other one, right? Depending on hot into cold or cold into hot. However, if you have it in a vessel, the vessel is separating it from the water. Even if the water's hot and you're putting in a vessel of cold water, because there's a separation of the walls of the vessel, perhaps that weakens the power of the heat that it's less able to heat the water in the flask.
So you're
Or whatever it
saying,
is.
here's the bucket that has all the hot water, and then you have this separate vessel that's filled with cold water, and you're taking the cold water vessel and placing it into the hot water vessel.
Correct, and correct, and that means that there was a separation between the two. The walls of the vessel separate between the two. Yeah. Yeah. So again, he suggests maybe that's the difference, because if you look at the wording is he takes a flask of water and puts it into a bucket of hot water, right? So because he uses it, it sounds like he's talking about putting it in while it's still in its vessel and not pouring the water in directly.
Which word is flask?
Well, the word is kisoin. Kisoin it's. I use the word flask just so that you can understand what's going on. Huh? The word kisoin is a again it's a type of vessel. No, leave it. Anyways, where are we? Okay, so Amar Lay, he said to him, Ma'ora itmar, teach it that it actually said pouring, even though the original quote we said was a flask going into the hot water, etc. But the Gemara says no, it was a misquote. The Gemara says it's a misquote. Say it was pouring. So after the entire discussion that we had and all the back and forth arguments that we had, we basically determined that the whole rule just doesn't apply.
What's Ma'ara?
Ridiculous! We had a whole discussion just to figure out that the rule doesn't apply.
No, but it applies in regards to what containers.
Huh?
There's 3 different containers that we're talking about.
The truth is, it might still apply to an antichi. To an antichi. A built-in bathtub we didn't mention, because we mentioned pouring it into a seifel, which is a bucket. We already determined that a seifel was not the same as an antichi, so perhaps we're saying that when it comes to a bucket, we're basically gonna say the rule like Beis Hillel. All right? Basically, it seems like we are backing Beis Hillel's opinion, which makes sense, and rejecting Rabbi Shimon's opinion. That's what it seems to me.
Yeah.
Yeah? What do you say? Do you agree with that? Disagree with that? Maybe agree with it?
Does it also apply to a cup?
What's that?
Does it also apply to a cost?
Does it also
Because they were
apply?
talking about a cost.
So again, obviously a cup. A cup would be the most lenient. What it seems to be saying is that a seifel, a bucket, is now having the same rule as a cup, and that it's going like Beis Hillel.
So because this is going like Beis Hillel.
So the way that we understanding it now, it could be that the Gemara is bringing this last thing just to tell you that the halacha is like Beis Hillel, but not just like Beis Hillel in a cup, but the seifel is like a cup. Yeah.
But
An ambati, we didn't discuss the ambati concept. Since we didn't discuss the ambati concept, I would assume that we're leaving the ambati as is. And if you really want to go deeper and understand whether that is in fact the correct conclusion or the incorrect conclusion, I would suggest you look in Shulchan Aruch and see what the actual rule is and whether it. I think it actually does say that an ambati is prohibited, meaning it's prohibited to put cold into hot. Yeah, it's prohibited to put cold into hot in ambati.
I was looking at that. It's got in the original statement, it's got the little dollar next to Beis Hillel's opinion that goes to somewhere in the Mishnah Torah, which sort of implies that Rambam says that the hawk is like Beis Hillel in this.
Where does it say that?
Well, that's what I'm guessing. See, it's got the little dollar thing going on.
Where do you have the dollar?
By Ben Chami, L'tocha Tzonim, and Tzonim L'tocha Chami.
All right, so first of all, you have the dal there, which means it could indicate. By the way, it's not just the Rambam; it also quotes the Shulchan Aruch. Tul Shulchan Aruch Chaim Siman Shin Yud Ches Siv Yud Beis. If you want to bring it, we can read it. Who wants to bring Aruch Chaim? Let's see. You want to be a serious Talmudic scholar over here. Let's see you get the book. Let's bring out the book. Okay, Aruch Chaim Siman Shin Yud Ches. You see it over there, Aruch Chaim. Aruch Chaim Shin Yud Ches. This. Here you go. We're whipping out the books over here. We're going to determine something. You found it? Okay. Okay, Yitzchak has a quick question. What's your question,
So
Yitzchak?
Dilma Shane, perhaps that it's not Hatam. What is Hatam?
Shani is different. Dilma Shani, perhaps it is different. Perhaps that situation is different than the other situations. Yeah?
The Mipsak is
Mifsak is separated, right?
separated vessel.
Yeah, that the vessel separates it. You have a question?
Yeah.
What's your question?
So we say, we ask on Shmuel, right at the beginning of Membeis.
Yeah.
Are we saying that Shmuel holds like Rabbi Shimon? But if Shmuel holds like Rabbi Shimon, how could he say that you're not allowed to put out a burning piece of wood in Rosh Hashanah, but only a burning piece of metal, right? That's the
Okay.
question.
But you're already ahead.
Oh, I thought you guys did that.
You're on Membeis Amud Beis?
I think so, yeah. I thought you guys were talking about a Abaya and Rabbi Yosef.
No, we're talking about Abaye. Yeah, Abaye and Rabbi Yosef. Yeah, but that's talking about the hot water. Where are you?
Here.
Okay, so where do you? No, because that we learned that last week. You're in last week's Gemara. Okay, you could still ask the question. Yes, from last week's Gemara. Let's hear your question.
Okay, so we never said that Shmuel holds like Rabbi Shimon. We only said that Shmuel holds Davar Shein Miskabin is mutter.
Right.
So why are we assuming that Shmuel would also hold like Rabbi Shimon?
Because that's exactly what we're assuming. If Shmuel holds like Rabbi Shimon in one situation, we'd assume that he always holds like Rabbi Shimon's opinion.
we already
Especially on Shabbos, when they're two very similar halachas. Even though they are two independent halachas, but they're two very similar halachas, and we would assume if he held like one, he would hold like the other. Then the Gemara holds that no, he actually split down the two. He holds like one and not like the other.
But we already,
Yeah.
also we already know that Shmuel.
Okay, what did we say? It was Shin Yud Ches Yud Beis.
So like if they do that, especially if they
Ches?
went to a banquet and they tried to like highlight the yeshiva, it's the 25-year anniversary, and they like film just like
Hold on.
guys dancing.
Necham Shapira Mimenu Mayim Chamim Mutalitim Teiche Tzayin. Tela Shira Mutal Tzuk Mayim Chamim Teiche Mayim Tzayin. Tzayin Teiche Mayim Chamim. Who shall lo yiu b'kli Rishon? Necham Chamim Mim Harbe. So he says it can't be in a kli Rishon.
Like, what are we doing in yeshiva? There's no drama here.
No, there's
Yeah.
tons of drama.
But based
Now
on
it doesn't really
Shabbat.
mention.
No,
It doesn't.
You gotta get the right stuff. You can't highlight the learning. You gotta highlight.
What? When do we
You
have
gotta
a
highlight.
It doesn't mention about an abati, which is interesting. It doesn't say anything about an abati. So, but it could be, if you want to read the Magen Avram and the Magen David over here, maybe one of them does mention it. Right?
So does he?
By the way, I want to open up, if anybody wants to ask questions from the people watching online, you can ask questions by putting it in the comment. And if you do put in the comment, right now it's the end of the class, so we will give you about 5 minutes to ask any question that you want. It does not have to be specifically about the Talmud. Any question about Judaism that you want, you can ask now, and we will attempt to answer the question if we feel it's legitimate or if we feel we have the answer. If it's we feel it's just like a wild, random, stupid question, we're just gonna
He thinks like he's living
ignore
life
you.
and everyone's
Yeah.
watching.
We won't call you out. Don't worry. If we think it's stupid, we won't call you out for it. We'll might just ignore you. But if it's a good question, we will definitely try to answer it. Remember, the easy way to ask a question. We are still live right now. Assuming that you're watching this now and not later. But if you're watching this now live, you could put in a question to the comments and we will answer you. It could be any question about Judaism. It does not need to be specifically about what we discussed, etc. In the meantime, we will try to answer some of the students who are having questions on this. Did you read the Magen Avram and Magen David over there? You didn't read it? Yeah? Yeah?
Shmuel said earlier, well, we said,
Yeah, we would have to have like cameras everywhere.
I don't want you to record.
No mic. You don't.
We said earlier about Rabba.
Yeah.
Rabba only holds, he holds like Rav, but he holds like Shmuel in 3 opinions.
Okay.
One of those 3 was Rabbi Shimon with regards to Greer.
Right.
We established that Shmuel holds specifically like Rabbi Shimon in that case.
By Greer. Right.
Greer. So
Right.
would that imply that Shmuel only holds like Rabbi Shimon with regards to Davar Shein and Niskaven and not?
No, we're talking about. Was it Rava? No, Rabbah, right?
Rabba.
We're talking about Rabbah, and Rabbah held like Rabbi Shimon, Rabbah held like Shmuel by greater that the halach is like Rabbi Shimon. He doesn't say about anything else. We're not discussing. We're not even discussing Shmuel's opinion. We're not discussing Shmuel's opinion at all.
So we could still assume.
Again, we're discussing Rabbah's opinion, not Shmuel's opinion.
Like people are going right, but if we're saying Rabbi Shimon with regards to Greira, not like Rabbi Shimon in general.
No, because Rabbah only holds like Shmuel with greater. In that rule of greater. Rabbah only holds like Shmuel by greater. It could be that Shmuel holds like Rabbi Shimon in other situations as well, and then we ignored it. Yeah. Okay, we have an interesting question from the crowd. Are you allowed to cut your beard, or do you choose not to? Oh, you see, that's a good question. What do you say? Are you allowed to cut your beard?
I'll pick Kabbalah, no.
Oh, okay, that's a good answer. Now the fact is,
And rest 3 weeks.
the 3 weeks. So, that's a good point. So first of all, at the moment, the Jewish people are in 3 weeks of mourning the temple's destruction, which ends in the 9th of Av. You can look that up. And Jewish people are prohibited from cutting their hair, and obviously that includes the beard, in these 3 weeks. That will be for all Jews. So if you have a Jewish friend and for some reason he starts growing shrubble for the next 3 weeks, you'll know why, because we're not allowed for these 3 weeks starting. When did it start? It started last Tuesday, right? Last Tuesday, and it's exactly 3 weeks. So today's Tuesday, then another 2 weeks. Another 2 weeks, they grow. So if you see your Jewish friends are starting to grow a little bit of stubble, so you'll know that they're not cutting their hair at all for the next 2 weeks. Except what?
The mustache, if it interferes with eating.
Oh no, but that even in the 3 weeks, I don't think you cut.
Yeah.
You could cut? Okay, you say you could cut, maybe you could. Anyways, that being said, there is actually a dispute amongst Torah authorities whether a person's allowed to cut their beard or not. There are those that say that it's 100% prohibited biblically to cut your beard. There are others that say that depends how you cut it, okay? Now, in the Torah it says, do not destroy the corners of your face, which include your beard. And some rabbis, well, not some rabbis, most rabbis hold that prohibition is only if you're taking a razor and putting it straight to your face, which you're literally cutting out the hair at the second it comes in, you're cutting it right out. So some rabbis say that is the only prohibition of cutting your beard, and therefore many Jewish people, they use machines, right? Machine razors. Now the machine razors actually are kind of like scissors, right? If you know how they work, they're kind of like scissors where they have two pieces of metal cutting on each other. It's not cutting directly on your face. A razor is actually using your face as the other side of the scissors. That's how a razor works. It's using your face as the second side of the scissors to cut your beard. Now that everybody agrees, all authorities believe that it is 100% prohibited. You're not allowed to cut your beard with a razor. However, what's that?
Even if, like, let's say your work, your occupation requires that you're clean shaven.
You're not allowed to do it, no. What if your job requires you to eat pig? You can't do that. No, I'm serious. You can't do that.
I understand.
Okay, so it's the same thing. If your job requires you to cut your beard with a razor, you are not allowed to have that job. You can't be your job.
Before electric razors, what did men do?
So I hate to break it to you that most people in the world, it wasn't so popular to shave. A lot of people had beards. Okay, as a matter of fact, when it became standard to shave, it was already when machines came out, and very often there was machine razors, and these machine razors basically were like scissors, and therefore it's allowed according to some authorities. Now, there's a different prohibition, which I'm not going to get into, that some rabbis hold prohibits you from cutting your beard at all in any way, shape, or form. And of course, the Hasidic movement, which tries to be strict when it comes to Jewish law, the Hasidic movement, we do not cut our beards whatsoever in any way, shape, or form. We don't cut our beards. Zil. Okay? As a matter of fact, you see this beard, this is all natural. This is organic beard. I never shaved in my life. Nope, never did.
Your life?
Nope, never shaved. Except my beard.
Show
Nope.
the people
I never cut my beard. Now sometimes I stick my hands through my beard and then a piece of hair comes out. But yeah, I've never actually shaved my beard.
Wow, so there might be a piece of hair in there that's
40 years old.
how old are you?
41.
What's that?
There might be a piece of hair that's like
28
41
years.
years old.
28
Could be.
years.
No, I don't think so. It usually doesn't last. It usually doesn't last that long. We have a very interesting question there. Go back to the question a second. We have another interesting question. The question is, I have a question. Would you consider someone of Ashkenazi descent Jewish? Now that is he said no. Oh, that's it. He's a Shfar. He's an Iraqi Jew. He's like, no, Ashkenazis, out of here, gone. You would have to. That means I wouldn't either be Jewish because I'm from Ashkenazi descent as well. That's a very good question. Unfortunately, there are people that try to make the question of what is the definition of a Jew. They try to make it controversial. It's actually very stupid because in reality, the Jewish nation has been around for 3,000 years, and there's been accepted definitions up until a few hundred years ago. There's been a accepted definition of what makes a person a Jew, and that definition is still what we consider Jewish, right? I don't think anybody has the right to decide 3,000 years after a nation existed. I don't think somebody has the right to come 3,000 years later and decide that they have the right to change the definition of what is Jewish and what isn't Jewish. It's not like in some other religions where there's debate, etc. The Jewish nation had very clear rules of what's a Jew and what's not a Jew. Okay? The rule is very simple. There's two ways you can be Jewish. Either if your mom is Jewish or if you convert using the proper, how should I say it? What would you call it? The proper affiliation technique, whatever it is. You have to use that, one of the two. That's what makes a person Jewish. Okay? Now, I'm assuming that the question comes from person that takes DNA tests. DNA tests today are not as accurate as people think they are. There are certain things that they can almost prove completely, like your father, your brother, etc. But when they tell you you're Greek, you're Russian, you're Romanian, you're Jewish, Ashkenazi Jewish, these things are not hardcore science. It's actually what they do is that the first, say, 1,000 or 2,000 people that they did tests on, they basically asked them a questions, and what do you know about your past? And let's just say that 9 out of 10 people that said that they have Ashkenazi past had a certain DNA marker, so that anybody else that has the DNA marker, they assume they're Ashkenazi. It's not necessarily a fact that you're Ashkenazi Jewish. It's not necessarily that you're actually from Jewish descent just because your DNA officially, what do they call these things? Ancestry.com and all these things. It doesn't really mean that you definitely have Jewish ancestry, and it definitely doesn't mean that your mom's mom was Jewish. Okay, so again, if you know for a fact that your mom is Jewish, you have accurate detail, and I mean Jewish based on the biblical definition of Jewish. And if you're wondering what that definition is, you can definitely send a comment or send me a email, and I can deal with that. But at the end of the day is that if you know for a fact that your mom is Jewish, then you're Jewish. If not, then you have to go through conversion process, etc. Here's an interesting question. Is it possible to become a Jew if I cut my beard in my life? Absolutely, you can become a Jew even if you cut your beard before in your life. Although if you're going to convert with a Hasidic group, you're going to have to stop doing that. If you convert with a non-Hasidic group, then it could be they might allow you to cut your beard after you're Jewish as well. But in a Hasidic group, you definitely will have to stop doing it. What is that? Would I need to have my foreskin removed to convert? Yeah, absolutely. I hate to break it to you. We're going to chop something off. You want to come Jewish? You're going to have a little less down there, and that's that. You just got to live with that. That is one of the requirements if you want to become Jewish. Yeah. Yeah. Anyways, I think the person that asked that is not. That's it. He's out. I'm not telling you Jewish. You want to chop me up? Forget about it. That's it. As a matter of fact, somebody once complained that I didn't accept him as Jewish. I said, no problem. Pull down your pants. I'll do it right now. We'll make you Jewish. That's it. Whoop it out. Make it happen. Anyways, yeah? Anyone else? All right, we're going to give you another 5-6 seconds to ask any more questions, and then we're going to have to move on because our class over here needs to continue learning the Talmud on their own. Again, if you have any more questions, you put it in the comment, and we will try to answer the questions. You have another 10 seconds, and then we're going to shut it off. If we don't have a comment in the next 10 seconds, then, or a comment or question that we feel is worthy of discussing, then it's off. All right? Oh, we have another one. Can I get an Israeli passport with heritage linkage? Again, if you're talking about the DNA, no.
The Israeli
the Israeli, according to our friend David Bernstein over here, he says that the Israeli Supreme Court officially knocked that down, and it's not good enough to get Israeli citizenship. Yeah. Are Messianic Jews still Jewish? That's a very good question. First of all, I think Messianic Jews, many of them were never Jewish. So it's not, are they still Jewish? Many of them were never Jewish. Messianic Jewish movement, as the one that's called the Messianic Jewish movement, is really a Christian movement that decided, it's a Christian movement that decided that they wanted to adopt more biblical style rituals and act more Jewish. But it's really a Christian movement. It's not a Jewish movement. And unfortunately, the name Messianic Jew very often attracts us, a few Jews. So in the movement, I'll tell you what, I've met a lot of people that call themselves Messianic Jews. Of them, I think maybe 10% are actually really Jewish. The other ones are just Christians that wanted a more Jewish style, congregation, and that's why they do that. So yeah, so again, the name could be a little bit, how should I say it, misleading. But yes, the Messianic Jewish movement is definitely not a Jewish movement. It's a Christian movement that chooses to use that name because they're Christians that want to have a more Jewish ritual. And by the way, it happens to be that they might attract a few Jews that want to go to Christianity, but they want to maintain their heritage. So it's kind of like a go-between. I wouldn't suggest it because I think if you want to be a Jew, you should be a Jew the real way. Right? No cutting corners. And if you want to be Christian, again, I might not, if you're Jewish, it's not good to be Christian. For a Christian, it might be good to be Christian, right? Might be better than the alternative. Today we have, what's the alternative? You're going to be a far left-wing atheistic maniac? I would much prefer a guy be Christian than be a far-flung left-wing maniac. I don't know what. Anyways. Good. That's a question. We answered that question. I heard that in Old Testament, Jewish people had to do something to have their sins forgiven. Okay, so first of all, that's a very interesting thing. I know it's spoken a lot about in Christianity, about how is sin forgiven. There are various different ways. There's a lot to speak about. It's a bit beyond the scope of a quick question-answer session. If you want, you could private message me, and when I have time, I'll try to answer it. It is a bit of a longer answer. In simple terms, God, there's a difference between being forgiven for sin and having the soul properly cleansed for sin. To be forgiven to be forgiven for sin, you just have to decide resolutely that you're never going to sin again, and then you're good to go. Right? That's how you're forgiven for sin. If you completely and honestly, sincerely decide that you're never going to sin again, then that is itself the atonement for sin. All right? Anyone else? Let's go. Should we give them another 10 seconds or we just shut it out? What do you say? No, should we give them another few seconds to ask questions? What do you say? Don't see. Okay, we'll give you 10 more seconds. Anybody asks a question, 10 seconds, we'll try to answer it. Otherwise, forget about it. We're going to close the session. 10, 9. Ooh, I have to do this all myself. Luke, can we have some help? 8, 7, 6, 5. If you're asking a question, you better type it quickly. 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Wait, before you shut it off, everybody there, I want you right now, before you forget, like this if you're on Facebook, share it if you're on Facebook. Again, even though it won't be live, but you can rewatch this, so please share it with all your friends so that people could hear it, they can enjoy this discussion. As well, if you're on YouTube, make sure to hit subscribe and the bell button so that you stay in touch with us and you hear when we come back on. I much appreciate it every time I see people on asking questions and commenting. You could still ask questions, by the way, and I might answer you later. But yes, do it right away before you forget. Please, right now, hit subscribe. That's that. All right, let's continue. I think we're going to go off. There you go. We are going to... Bye-bye.
Thaddeus said, enjoy your day.